Hey guys, thanks for stopping by today. Today I want to make another pair of capstones for the upcoming intermediate tournament. We did some soapstone ones the other day, and today I want to concentrate on another piece of equipment that I have, and that's going to be a rotary module or a fourth axis attachment for my Snapmaker. Snapmaker is a 3-in-1 machine. It does 3D printing and some laser engraving and CNC. Some of you might be familiar with a 3-axis CNC machine or one that moves more like a 3D printer where you've got your left, right, front, back, up, down kind of axes. The fourth axis just adds a rotational element to it. So you can use subtractive manufacturing to make some asymmetrical pieces, which you would otherwise not be able to do. Now, a 4-axis CNC does still have some limitations. Speaking of limitations, there's kind of a, not really a stigma, but there's a thought, or at least there was a thought in my mind when I was younger, that the limitations are a bad thing. And I've come to realize that no, they're not. Limitations are really kind of guide rails, guidelines that help your creativity flow. So if someone were to come up to you with a project and say, I want you to make whatever you want, then you kind of just sit there and scratch your head and go, well, I mean, that's not very helpful. But then if someone were to come to you with a project and say, I need you to make a box out of wood and I need it to be done in 2 weeks and your budget is $300, then you have a much clearer path forward. And you can work within those limitations and really, I mean, you've heard the saying that uh, necessity is the mother of invention, and that really kind of shines when you're on these when you limit yourself or you're limited by external constraints, something that a client puts on you or something that your budget or your timeline puts on you. So limitations for this project are going to be time, of course, because that's not infinite. I'm going to give myself about a week to get these capstones done, not only because the tournament is coming up, but because I have other things I want to do, and a week seems doable. Budget is going to be none. I'm going to look around through the exotic blanks that I have and see if something kind of looks appropriate for the project. This is a capstone pair, so I'm going to do a light and a dark. So I'll see what I have in the box over there and work with that. I do give these out for free, so I've already purchased these exotic blanks to be used for whatever project they would be used for, but I don't want to go out and purchase additional material. So that's going to be one of our limitations for this project. And then material, this is going to be tied to the fourth axis. So as I said previously, I'm going to look through my exotic hardwood blanks and see what I have available. Um, since CNC is a subtractive manufacturing process, and since I would normally turn something wood on the lathe, then I want to use kind of that same material, but focus on what the fourth axis would bring to the table to kind of add some add interest in that manner. And then constraints on design or limitations on design. These, like I said, are going to be capstones for the board game TAC. So I have a rough idea of what size they should be. And then I'll look at what blanks that I have over there and see if those sizes will fit within those blanks. So without further ado, let's go inside, get on the computer, and do some design work.
Now hold up. That's not a computer. Yeah, you got me there. All your designs should start, well, they should start in your head first and kind of roll them around there for a while, see how you like it. And then you should sketch it out. You can waste a whole lot of time on some kind of CAD program if you don't have at least a basic sketch to go off of first. Okay, so I'm going to breeze through this stuff here. If you guys would like for me to do a more in-depth YouTube on my process here, then I certainly can dive into that in a future video. But basically, I'm just taking those sketches that I had and I'm realizing them in the software. This is FreeCAD. It's a free to use open source piece of CAD software. I mean, the name kind of says it all, but just in case you were doubting that, it's a parametric modeling program, which means you're using parameters to define your shapes. So this lends it to more geometric shapes. Organic shapes are a little bit harder to realize in this type of program. If you want something more organic, I would recommend a program like Blender, especially one where you can use the claymation, not claymation, but the clay tools, where you can basically just take a blob and kind of mold it to your heart's content. So I'm layering sketches on top of one another, and then I'm positioning them along the z-axis to add some height for this. And then I'm offsetting those to provide the twist. You may notice as you get to the end of this video that the capstones that I actually produce are not quite this shape, and that's because when I processed the darker wood, the cocobolo, I ended up not having as much material as I had anticipated, and so I sized these down, but not proportionally. So the capstones that were actually produced are a little more squat than these. And once I get a shape that I like, let's add some filleting details, things like that to it. For the second one, I wanted to keep the general shape of the first one, but instead of doing a curved, smooth design, I wanted something angled. And this is something that would be very difficult to do on a traditional lathe. You could probably do it with like a bandsaw or a circular saw. It would take quite a bit of fiddling around, or you'd have to make jigs to make this. So using the fourth axis on the CNC allows me to do something like this, which would be hard to produce with other methods. And once I'm happy with the general shape of this, I'm again going to clean up some edges, add some fillets, things like that. Rotate it around, trying to imagine how it would play, how it would feel in the hand. And then once I'm satisfied, we'll move on to the next stage, which is taking this STL and putting it into the software, Lubon in this case, which is what my Snapmaker runs on, to produce a G-code so we can mill this out. Again, with the bait and switch, that is not a fourth axis. And you're right. I started on the lathe to remove some of the bulk of the material. That way it would cut down tremendously on the time on the fourth axis of the CNC. Just because you have a piece of technology does not mean that it is the right fit for everything. Let me show you the time comparison between removing this extra material and not. So as you can see, by spending a little time at the lathe, I've saved myself 7 hours of machine time. And now, back to the show. Being at the lathe is a very zen-like process for me. I've used a lot of power tools in my time, and for some reason this one, it just takes me to a different place. So if you've never turned any wood before, I highly recommend it. I can put my hearing protection on and my face shield and just zone out for a while and watch the wood take shape in front of me. I'm checking every once in a while to make sure that I don't take off too much material. Trying to get that diameter of the wood down to about 1 millimeter or 2 more than the largest part of my final shape. And here we'll bring the project into Lubon. I'm putting in the dimensions of my turned wood and then bringing in that STL. And you'll notice it's going to come in as a grayscale image. And that's just how Lubon processes these STLs, these 3D shapes. It does the same thing for a relief carving on the 3-axis CNC. And so if you look at this, these white lines here are going to be the most shallow of the cuts. And then as it gets darker, it cuts deeper. Set my parameters of the toolpath. I'm going to go with a larger kind of ball end mill. This one's about 3 mil, which for Americans, it's about 1/8 of an inch. It's going to leave a rough surface, but I do plan on doing some hand finishing of this. So I'm okay with the rougher surface off the machine, especially because it will lead to a faster cut. And I do have if you'll remember, I have the deadline of about a week on this. Some calibration. and then we will be ready to cut. I've not really put this tool through its paces. I need to take some time and do some more intricate carving on it, some further learning of the software and the capabilities of it, because it really is very nice to have this ability to carve something that's not symmetrical. Clean up, take that piece off. And here you can see the rough edges that I was talking about. If you pause the video here, you'll even notice something very interesting about the cocobolo wood. When you first cut into it, it has these wonderful streaks of purple and orange in it. And unless you are the one cutting the wood, you will probably never get to see that. It oxidizes very quickly into various shades of brown, but right when it's on the lathe or when you cut into those fibers, you get this glimpse at kind of what the wet wood would look like. Here's the second piece coming off. Again, those rough edges will finish up here in a little bit. And moving over to the hand finishing, I'm going to use the Dremel to take off the bulk of the tool marks. And then I'm going to switch over to some hand sanding. Going to go through some grits. I think I did 180, 220, and 400. Went through all those, and then we will spray on some lacquer finish. Multiple coats, multiple coats, multiple coats. Get the gloss and the depth that I'm looking for in that finish. And then we are done.
All right, I want to thank you guys for watching today. If you want to support this channel further, you can buy my books, join my Patreon, and if you'll like and subscribe, or at least watch this video to the end, it really does help kind of grow channels like this. I do a lot of this stuff out of my own pocket to kind of expand my horizons, and then I started YouTube to kind of share that with you guys. Oh yeah, and we'll leave you with some glamour shots of what we made today. Thanks, guys.